Okay, so this is the third session of the Midrash, how to understand Midrashim. And as I mentioned, so because of technical difficulties, let's call them, absence of some key individuals, we don't have sheets. I do have the sheets on my phone because I didn't make them; they just weren't printed out. So afterwards, we'll make sure that they become available to everyone. For future reference, you'll be able to see them and keep them if you want to have them. And just like the recordings are all getting uploaded, so if you feel the need to, if you fall asleep or get distracted or have to leave or anything like that, you can always go back and listen to it again afterwards, which is great that we have it for posterity for those who might have missed the original delivery. Sometimes I even listen to them again to see what it sounds like and check if I made any mistakes. So for tonight, I have two selections from Midrash that I want to look at, and as I said, I'm using what's on my phone here, which is okay. From Parashat Toledot is the first one. Okay, Parashat Toledot is the story of Yaaqov and Esav. Everybody knows that, right? Yaaqov and Esav. Ele Toledot. Yitzchak ben Abraham holy Yitzchak, etc., etc. Yitzchak has been 40 shana b'kachtot Rivka, so that he's 40 years old. This is Toledot and Bereshit. Parashat Toledot. So the story of Yitzchak and Rivka having their twins, Yaakov and Esav. And what's the story? We all know the story. So Esav is a little bit of an impetuous guy, so he ends up selling his Bechorah for some soup, which is he thought was a good deal at the time. Maybe afterwards reconsidered, but at the moment it seemed like a great deal because the Bechorah didn't seem like anything to him. But what good does it give me? This title for the future, or whatever. It's too abstract. It's not tangible. He gave it up. Anyway, fast forwarding to to Yitzchak, seems to be on his deathbed, and so Yitzchak tells Esav, who we all know, he favored Esav, right? He favored Esav. He thought that Esav was going to be the future leader. He was going to be the successor. He was going to be the one to found Am Yisrael. We would have been a very different kind of a nation had that been the case. And of course, that wasn't Hashem's plan, but that was what Yitzchak thought was the plan. So he tells Esav, listen, I want you to go make me a nice dinner like you normally do. Go hunt for some venison or whatever it was, and produce, make me a dinner, and I'm going to bless you. And so Esav leaves to do what he does best, which is to hunt. And in the meantime, what happens? Is that what ends up happening? So Esav comes back, he gets the bracha, and then he becomes the next leader. So what happens? Somebody else intervenes. So who intervenes in the story? Rivka steps in, and what does she do? What does she do? She helps Yaakov get into a disguise. She dresses him up, right? Just like your mom did for you for Purim, right? He doesn't dress himself up. His mom actually, puts on the costume to be like Esav, right? And it says one of the things that she did in order to dress him up what was the biggest concern of Yaakov? What was the biggest concern of Yaakov when it came to trying to fool his father? Right, he's very, he has smooth skin. He's ish halak. He's very smooth skinned. And my brother Esav is very hairy, so he's going to know right away that it's not me. And so she takes the skin, the animal skins, right, and puts it on his arms to make it seem like he has that's really hairy. That must have been really hairy. Esav was a really hairy guy. So, what is the thing that he wasn't concerned about? Which is kind of interesting.
Lying.
What? Lying, right? But what? There was something else. What about his voice? Isn't that the most obvious thing if you're going to pretend to be somebody? So, if you ever notice, now we know that Rashi gives us a reason why Yaakov limits what he says because he doesn't want to lie too much. So when he says, "Are you my firstborn?" Esav, he just says, "Ani," right? Ani, right? Anochi Esav b'chorecha, right? He says that. right? So he says there's two things. But then he says to him, "Are you really Esav?" He says because it's a kol kol Yaakov yadayim yadei Esav, which literally means you sound like Yaakov, right? The Midrash says that it means something else, but literally what he's saying is you sound like your hands feel like Esav, but the voice sounds like Yaakov. What's going on here? Kol kol Yaakov. So he says, "Are you really Esav?" And he says, "Ani, I am." So he realized, the less you say, the less you give away who you really are. But he didn't seem so concerned about that. He was more concerned about the physical. He's going to feel me and see that I'm not really Esav. So she makes him the hairy arms. But the other thing that she does is she dresses him in clothes. Does anybody remember that? So what clothes did she dress him in? Oh, it doesn't say that. What does it actually say that she took? What does it say that she took? No, that's Yosef. It says that she took for him the Vatikach Rivkat Bigdei Esav Binah Gadol Hamudot, the very fine garments of Esav, her son Esav, that were in her house, Asher Ita Babayit, that she kept in the house. So she had Esav's clothes still in her wardrobe, in her closet, or whatever at home. And so when it came time to dress up Yaakov, she also dressed him in the clothes of Esav, which helped because then how does that help in the story? Since Yitzchak can't really see anyway, so he doesn't know what Yaakov is wearing.
So probably the scent.
I figured the scent, right? Because he says you smell like reach sadeh. So you smell like the field. So probably his clothes, like if you ever play outside, right? When you play outside, it has the smell of the grass, it has the smell of the outside. So somebody who's been working outside or doing activities outside, the clothing has a certain smell to it. So it smells like the field. So that's why he had that smell, because he was wearing the clothes of Esav. So that's just on a pshat level. But the Midrash says something really interesting about these clothes that Rivka brought to clothe Yaakov. He said. So the Midrash says that what was the reason, or where were these from? Where were these clothes from that she brought?
Nimrod.
From Nimrod, exactly. Shehamadotan min Nimrod. Why are they called the Hamudot so desirable? Because he desired them from Nimrod, and in fact the Midrash says that Esav killed Nimrod in order to take them. And he would always wear these very fine garments of Nimrod whenever he served his father, because he was so good at kibbud avim. They would always wear these garments of Nimrod. Esav, because he was such a tzaddik, and when it came to kibbud avim, he was exceptional. So he would always wear the fine clothes. And where did he get these clothes? He got them from Nimrod. And how did he get them? He killed him, because Nimrod is not going to give Esav his clothes. Right? So this is what the Midrash says. Now, on the surface, what would you say about this Midrash? Is it sticking to the pshat? Is that the simple meaning of what the pasuk says? It's talking about Nimrod? Not really, right? Is there any problem that we talked about once? How do you know when a Midrash is meant to be taken in a historical, literal way, and when maybe it's meant to be taken in a figurative way? So one of the ways that you can judge that, or one of the ways you can gauge it, I wouldn't say it's a science, it's not an exact science, but one of the ways that you can gauge that sometimes is whether it fits historically or logically with the flow of events. Like, for example, saying that Lot was celebrating Pesach is a stretch of the imagination because Lot lived before the events of Pesach. So it would be impossible, logically speaking, for him to be celebrating Pesach. So is there anything that would seem to indicate that these clothes could not have been Nimrod's clothes? Historically speaking.
We need a background on Nimrod.
Huh?
We need a background on Nimrod.
We need a background on him? Well, when did Nimrod live? Where is Nimrod mentioned in the Torah?
He's not mentioned in the Torah.
I'm not sure which Sefer Torah you guys are reading. But
during the Tower of Babel.
Right, so during Parashat Noach. In Parashat Noach, when the nations spread out, it mentions Nimrod. So what this Midrash does to us, is makes us do exactly what you just said. We need some background on Nimrod. In other words, that's what when the Midrash throws something in there, a personality who's somewhat obscure to us. We only know some stories about Nimrod here and there, about Avraham Avinu with Nimrod and things like that. But who is this Nimrod guy? We don't really know much about him. There's a Israelis, they like to use names on purpose that are really of bad people in the Tanakh. And so they do it like lahachis, they do it like, and so there's a lot of people named Nimrod now. They use that name, like it's become like a popular name in Israel.
Store name Nimrod.
Yeah, Nimrod. It's very. There's a guy. There was a real estate agent in my neighborhood. His name is Nimrod. It's a very. Huh?
Datan.
I haven't seen Datan and Aviram yet, but I'm sure they've got to be out there.
The guy who owns Green Olive.
What?
The pizza guy last week, the owner that's
Is Nimrod? Oh, there you go. So you see, yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, secular Israelis, they like to use names that are a little bit countercultural. Ones. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything about the person. It just means that the parents were usually means they were secular because they were using names that traditionally we wouldn't use. Like
I know some Nimrod that he got a name as addition.
Right. They changed the name. Right.
But it's Nimrod Shalom. That's what his name.
Yeah, sometimes they change the name. Yeah, I heard stories about. Sometimes like Chacham Ovadia was at a brit, and somebody said, "Oh, the name is going to be like Nimrod." I said, "No, it isn't. It's going to be this." Right? He changed the name, and then they said, "Okay, whatever the Rab said." So he took whatever said. Anyway, so aside from that, so the real Nimrod, the original one, he's mentioned in Parashat Noach. But first, what do we know about Esav? What does the Torah say about Esav? How is he described in the beginning of the parsha? I'm giving you, I'm leading you through it because our clue is Nimrod, right? Why is the Midrash trying to connect this story to Nimrod? That's what it's doing, right? Just like it tried to connect the story of Lot to Pesach, it's trying to connect something about Esav's clothes to Nimrod. Why would it be trying to connect them to Nimrod? We have to understand that that's trying to give us an insight into either Nimrod or Esav. Or probably both. In other words, just like the story of Pesach and the story of Lot, once we connect the two, we actually have an insight into the story of Lot that's much deeper than we thought we would. So when it comes to Nimrod, somehow is going to shed light. Understanding Nimrod is going to shed light on Esav. That's what we know. So let's take a look at what, and I'm just looking at what order I put it in. Okay, so if we take a look at Esav, what is he described as? Does anybody remember what the description of Esav is? Vayigdalu ha'ne'arim, Esav what? Who's Parashat Toldot? Well, nobody has Bar Mitzvah Parashat Toldot? That's when he was born. I'm saying Vayigdalu ha'ne'arim, right? So that's why I loved him, right? That's right. Because it says Vayigdalu ha'ne'arim v'Esav ish yodei tzayid ish sadeh. He was somebody who was yodei tzayid. Yodei tzayid literally means what? He knew how to trap. He knew how to hunt. And it says, Vayav Yitzchak et Esav kitzayid b'viv. Which literally means, again, that the tzayid, whatever he caught, whatever he trapped, was in the mouth of Yitzchak. In other words, Yitzchak saw Esav. He's such a provider. Okay? We think of Esav, he's a bad guy, and all these, we think of him, but it's not that Yitzchak only cares about food. Oh, Yitzchak, he was not paying attention to what's going on, he just cares about who's providing dinner, so he's, no, it's not saying that he's superficial, he only cares about food. What it means is that he saw, Esav is a real producer, look at this, he's the one who puts food on the table, he's supporting the family. Who's making dinner every night? Who's bringing home the bacon, lahavdil, It's not Yaakov sitting in the tent. It's Esav going out every day, bringing home dinner. So we see who's the real mover and shaker in this family. It's Esav, and he's called Ish Tzayid. He's a man of trapping, and that's why I loved him. And when it talks about Rivka, and when he praises Yaakov, he says because he thinks it's Esav, he says, "Oh, you have the smell of the field that Hashem blessed because you're such a good hunter," and all that. And Rivka, of course, prepares something which is similar to what Esav would normally prepare for his father. Okay, but from whatever she had in house. Okay, so the Midrash though is pointing us somewhere else. Now that we know what Esav is, let's take a look at what Noach. As soon as you hear this pasuk in Noach, you're going to say, "Why didn't I think of that?" I promise you, that's what you're going to say. I wouldn't have thought of it either. Except that when I saw this thing about Nimrod, I said, what is this talking about? I gotta go look up what the Torah actually says exactly about Nimrod, because why would the Midrash throw in Nimrod over here? And then you see, if you follow the clues, like I told you before, you find remarkable things. So let's go back to where it talks about Nimrod in the Torah, which is, again, in Parashat Noach, when it's talking about the spreading out of all the nations. And it says about Nimrod that this is in Parashat Noach. This is Pasuk. This is Perek Yud Pasuk Chet. V'chush yaladet Nimrod. This is describing the nations that came forth from the sons of Noach, and specifically from the sons of Ham. V'chush yaladet Nimrod. Cush, begat, was the Old English word that they used to use, right? Fathered Nimrod. Hu hechel, he began lihyot gibor ba'aretz, to be a mighty person on earth. Hu haya gibor tzayid lifnei Hashem. Interesting word, huh? Did you ever notice that before? What does tzayid mean again? It means trapping. So what is a gibor tzayid? A mighty trapper or hunter lifnei Hashem. Al ken ye'amar, therefore it is said, Ken Nimrod, Gibor Tzayid Lefnei Hashem, it says it twice. Therefore it would say about a person, in other words, what it means is that Nimrod was such a good trapper, or such a good hunter, that's a literal meaning, Gibor Tzayid, he was a mighty hunter, that people would use as a mashal about someone who was really good, Al ken ye'amar, therefore it said about other people, oh, he's like Nimrod, Gibor Tzayid Lefnei Hashem. Like today we would say, that guy's an Einstein, if he's really smart. Wow, he's an Einstein. He's so smart, right? That they would say, "Wow, he's a real Nimrod." If they saw somebody, right? If they saw somebody who was a really effective trapper, a really good hunter, they would say, "Wow, that guy's a regular Nimrod over there." Okay, so what do you see right away? Are you convinced right away that that's what the Midrash is talking about? You have to be, right? So why did the Midrash connect Esav to Nimrod? For sure, because the word Tzayid is in both, right? They're both described as Ish Tzayid or Gibor Tzayid. Okay? A man, a trapping man, or a mighty trapper. Same thing. Okay? And in both cases, what is Nimrod actually? What does Nimrod become? Vatihi Reshit Mamlachto Bavel. He became a king in Bavel. In fact, what do the Chachamim say about the Tzayid of Esav? Do you remember? About the trapping of Esav. What did they say about the trapping of Esav? It wasn't just trapping animals, although it obviously was trapping animals, because he did, in fact, put food on the table. What other kind of trapping did it say?
The heart of his death.
He would trap his father's heart, or other people possibly too, right? In other words, he was a manipulator. And what does it say about Nimrod also? Same thing. When it says Gibor Tzayid, it says he would tzad et habriyot. He would trap people. That's how he became a king. A trapper, a hunter, and a political leader are very similar. What do? What does it take to be a good hunter?
Trick them.
You have to trick people, right? And how do you trick them? You have to lure them in with something that they want. You have to figure out what is their Achilles heel, right? What's their weakness? What do they need? What do they want? And then you have to entice them and say, I'll be happy to give this to you as long as you accept me as your leader, right? That's how you get the power. Or we could think of it in business, it's the same thing. If you want to make money from somebody, you got to find out what they want, what they're willing to pay for, and then convince them to give you the money to give it to them, right? That's how business works. Politics is the same thing. The politician says, oh yeah, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that. They figure out, okay, what do the majority of people want? Oh, they want health care, they want that. Oh, I'll tell you that I'm going to pay for your health care, I'm going to do this and that. And then people say, oh, that's what we want, so we're going to vote for you. So that's Gibor Tzayid. In other words, it's to figure out what the person's vulnerability is, and then capitalize on it. That's how you become a leader of the type that Nimrod was. I mean, right? Of the type that Nimrod was. So somebody who's able to overpower a beast, an animal, which in theory is much more powerful than the person, right? If you want to trap, let's say, a lion or some very powerful animal, you can't just grab the animal and by the horns and just knock it down. You're not going to be able to do that. You have to trap it by putting some food out and then waiting till it's not looking, and you catch it, right? So the same thing is that you do with politicians. That's the same thing that they do, right? They entice you till you they get you into that voting booth, and then you're trapped. right? That's how they do it nowadays. I mean, they didn't have voting booths back then, but they, the fact is that the populace, the people, are much more powerful than any individual ruler, right? They could easily overthrow the ruler if they become really dissatisfied. There'll be a revolution. But so in order to keep them on message, or in order to keep them on the program, the leader has to continually re-entrap them with new promises and new things that are going to butter them up and keep them from rebelling or revolting against the leadership. That's the Gibor Tzait. So that's why Nimrod, as a trapper of animals, is also able to figure out what the weaknesses are in his subjects and entrap them as well. So what do you think now is the Torah telling you, or is the Midrash rather telling you, by saying that Esav wore Nimrod's clothes?
Well, it says more than that. No, it doesn't say that he killed Nimrod.
Right, it says in Midrash he killed Nimrod. So what do you think the killing of Nimrod really symbolizes?
That he's even a better trapper.
Because remember that Nimrod lived way before Esav. That's the historical part of it is that obviously Nimrod predates Esav significantly. So the likelihood that this is a description of a historical event is slim. So we could take it as a symbolism of slaying someone is taking over for them, right? Overtaking them, right? Nimrod was the Gibor Tzait of that era, but who is the Gibor Tzait of this era? It's Esav. Esav is the one who knows how to capture animals, and therefore also has acumen with how to capture people. He knows how to manipulate. Remember Crocodile Dundee? Did everyone say that? Right? He knows how to manipulate the animals, figuring out what their weaknesses are, and he also knows how to figure out what his father's weakness is, and to show him what he wants to see and tell him what he wants to hear, so that his father continues to support him and to promote him towards greater and greater leadership within the family, which is exactly what's happening. Esav is on the leadership track. So what the Midrash is trying to show you is the connection between, to bring out this idea of Gibor Tzait. This is not just specific to Esav, but that he is the successor of Nimrod. He would have been a Nimrodian type leader. He wouldn't have been a Yaakov type leader. A Nimrodian type leader is one who tries to figure out what the weaknesses and vulnerabilities are of the people and capitalizes on them, similar to what we talked about Bilam last week, similar to that type of mentality. Whereas Yaakov is there to try to educate people, to try to bring them closer to Hashem. He's not there to get power or to step on the backs of people. But he wants to actually uplift people, and he wants to create an Am Yisrael is supposed to inspire the nations of the world, bring them closer to Hashem, not dominate them, not an Esavian type or a Nimrodian type of kingdom. So this is what the Midrash. Now this is a Midrash where you can so clearly see the linguistic connection and even the conceptual connection between the two that it's right away obvious that that what was impressing Yaakov, Yitzchak, the ability of Esav to deliver. Look, he is a guy. He's really an effective guy. He's an effective guy. He makes things happen. He makes things happen bringing home food. He makes things happen getting people to follow him. When Yaakov comes back from living with Lavan, Esav approaches him with 400 guys. Right? In other words, he has a whole gang of people that follow him. He has really created a movement around himself. He's really a leader. He's able to build a kingdom. And look at Edom. Edom has generations and generations and generations of kings. Lifnei meluch melech lifnei Yisrael. Right? That's what it says at the at the end of Parashat Vayishlach. That before the Jews had any kingdom, before they had any king, Edom had generations of kings. Because Esav was, just like he was a master manipulator of the animal kingdom, he was a master manipulator of people, and therefore he was able to build a kingdom around himself. And this was what Yitzchak thought the Jewish people needed. We need an Esav. We need somebody who can really make things happen in the world. And that's going to be Esav. Not this guy Yaakov. He's a very nice guy, but he sits around, contemplating things all the time. He's not going to make. He's not going to deliver. We need someone who's going to deliver. We need to build a nation. What do you build a nation with? People sitting around philosophizing all day? It's not going to happen. We need to have a nation of people who can do stuff and can bring, can build an economy and can bring people to, together and unite them around the common purpose and all the things that Esav is able to do. So Yitzchak is impressed with Esav for very good reasons. The only thing is, his values are wrong. what Esav wants ultimately from to use his political acumen for, and to use his manipulative abilities and his effectiveness for, is not creating an Am Kadosh. That's not what comes out of Edom. It's to create something more like Nimrod, more around his own personality, his own ego, his own desire for power and dominion, which is exactly what he ends up creating for himself in Edom. So this is what the Midrash is trying to show you. All it has to say is a few words. That the clothing that Esav had was Nimrod, and he killed Nimrod. Well, what is that talking about? So then you look back at Nimrod. Oh yeah, Nimrod is Tzayid and Esav is Tzayid. What is it trying to tell you? Esav was the classic politician. The very first politician, the rabbis say the very first king, was Nimrod. The very first politician was Nimrod. Esav was in the same mold as Nimrod. As soon as you see that, then you start looking at what Esav was all about, and you say, you know what? It's true. He did exactly what Nimrod did. He started out as a hunter, and he ended up as a king, founding a dynasty for himself. And that's exactly what the Midrash brings. Yes?
You think there's any significance that this Midrash is placed here where Yaakov is putting on these clothes of Nimrod? Maybe like Yaakov is now becoming the trapper. He's like trapping his father.
So that's very good. So it could be that look at Yaakov, it's kind of using the toolbox of Esav in a certain way, right? Because he's becoming a trapper himself. And in fact, we find out that he goes into that after this, he ends up doing an internship with Lavan, who is the ultimate schemer, who out-schemes anybody. So he gets a real good training there of how to deal with, the most difficult people under the tutelage of his uncle Lavan. But that's exactly what, no, I think you're right, that's probably it. In other words, this is a moment where Yaakov is trying to be an Esav. He didn't want to do anything. Look what he wanted to do. No, I'm going to get caught. It's not going to be good. If it hadn't been for his mother pushing him, like a good Jewish mother does, right, to her son. No, you have to go. No, Mom, I don't want to go. Right, the Jewish mother pushes, and then he eventually goes. She does all the work. She makes the food. She gives him the clothes, puts on his clothes, everything, and puts him into the situation, and he has to go. So she's really the one that makes it happen. But remember, who is she? That's right. She's related to Lavan, isn't she? She's the sister of Lavan. And what does it call her at the end? It calls her the sister of Lavan, right? He goes to Lavan, Achi Imo, right? The brother of his mother. And at the very end it says he goes to Lavan, the father, the brother of Rivka, Em Yaakov Esav, the mother of Yaakov and Esav. In other words, from her came the ability to figure out how to scheme, because she came from that. She took on herself the values of the house of Yitzchak, but she still had the skill set that she picked up back home. Hey, I know how to handle a situation like this. Where do you think Esav? If you look at Esav and Yaakov, this is getting into Parshat Toledot too much, maybe, but if you look at them, they really reflect their parents. Right? Yitzchak and Rivka are totally opposite. Yitzchak is the most pure as the driven snow guy. He's never left Eretz Yisrael. He never did any, he didn't even find his own wife. His wife was brought to him. He's a pure guy. Rivka grew up in the house of Lavan. Very different upbringing, very different exposure. She comes and marries a Yitzchak. It's like a opposite attract situation, right? So Esav is much more similar actually to Rivka's family. Yaakov is much more similar really to Yitzchak's family. And sometimes you see in what you don't have some greatness, right? So Rivka sees in Yaakov, wow, what a holy person. I've never seen somebody like that before. And then Yitzchak says in Esav, wow, what an industrious guy. That's exactly what we need. Because people see what they don't have. So that's, and that could very well be that you see that Yaakov is taking on in a certain way the personality of Esav in the situation. Now there's one other Midrash I wanted to do tonight, and we still have the time to do it. And that's a Midrash that, and again, we don't have the notes tonight, I apologize, but it's okay, we can survive without it. This is from the book of Shmuel, because the rabbis in Midrash are consistent across Tanakh. They don't only use the methodology of Midrash in the Torah, but also in the Tanakh. And there's a really, really nice example of Midrash and how Midrash can help us understand the story in the story of Shmuel. Now, does everybody know the basic story of Shmuel, more or less? From the beginning of the book of Shmuel, about Chana. Everyone knows the story of Chana and Penina, and that we read on Rosh Hashanah.
She can't become pregnant.
So Chana can't become pregnant. So what does she do? She goes to she prays to Hashem, and she makes a promise. What's the promise?
If you give me a baby, I'll put it to work in the baby.
Exactly, and then of course, thankfully, right? Very good. So what happens then? So of course she has a baby, and Tfilat Chana happens because of that, and so she brings the baby after the baby is weaned.
Gemara brings up she would act like a chuspa.
That's a whole there's a whole long Gemara Masechet Berachot. Yeah. But I don't want to get distracted with that. But yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. So she's very forceful with her demand. Okay, to Hashem, but she gets answered, and when she comes back, so she brings him to fulfill her promise. Her promise was she's going to deposit him. So the year after the baby's born, it says that she brought him back to Eli like she promised, because she said, "Listen, this is the child that I prayed for. Remember this child." She says, "Let's bring the baby back," because Elkanah, her husband, was going to give her an out and say, don't worry about the promise, the whole thing. Nobody's going to remember that. We don't really have to give our child up for adoption to the Beit HaMikdash. She says, "Nope, I'm coming. We're going to go." And so she brings him, and as soon as he's weaned, meaning he doesn't need to nurse anymore, right? So he's not dependent on his mother anymore. He can live alone. So she brings him up to Shiloh. Shiloh was the place at the time that the Mishkan was, right? For that time. So it moved around several times. And it says, as soon as she brought him up, Vayishchatu atapar. This is a famous pasuk. It says, Vayishchatu atapar. So they had brought, as a gift, a bull. What did they bring a bull? They bring a bull as a korban, a sacrifice, a Thanksgiving sacrifice when they came. And it says, Vayaviu at na'ar el Eli. And they brought the child to Eli. So this pasuk is strange. Why does it mention they slaughtered the bull and they brought the child to Eli? Why would the two go together? So the Midrash explains the connection between the two. Why did they bring him? So the pshat is, why did they bring the child to Eli? What's the simple, in context, what's the reason why they they just came up to the Beit HaMikdash, they brought all kinds of celebratory gifts, bowls and flour. Why did they bring the child to Eli? Eli is the Kohen Gadol, right? Why did they bring the child to Eli? What? The baby was already born, so why now did she bring him? To give him, right? To say, look, here's I was here praying last year, you thought I was drunk and everything, and I told you that I wasn't really drunk, and I promised to bring the baby, and here's the baby. Look, it's a miracle. I had the baby like exactly because and Eli said to her when she was leaving, may Hashem fulfill what you asked for. He thought that she was, but she wasn't.
And she was drunk, and then
she wasn't. He thought. He saw her mumbling. He thought that she was drunk, but she wasn't. She was just very emotional. So really, that's the reason. However, what does the Masechet Berachot say in Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Bet? What does it say in Masechet Berachot? Rashi brings it. So it's very funny. Just as an aside, in Nach, Rashi is much more conservative about the use of Midrash. I don't know if you've ever learned Rashi on Nach. In Navi, he doesn't like to bring Midrashim as much. He does, he brings them. But he'll say, like he says here, V'rabotinu darshu ma'ashid darshu. The rabbis said whatever Midrash they said. He doesn't bring it like in Chumash, he brings lots of Midrashim. In Nach, he's a little less. He says, but he gives it though. She'ora lacha she'no tzarich kohen l'shchitat kodashim. Why did Shmuel get in trouble? Because Shmuel is this little pipsqueak, right? He shows up as a little kid. And it turns out that he told them, they said, let's bring a Kohen to slaughter this bull as a korban. And Shmuel said, no, I learned the halacha already, you don't need a Kohen. Who is this kid saying what you need and don't need a Kohen? What does he think he is? He just got here and he's already telling us how to run things. Nobody likes a person like that, right? They show up and on the first day you're already telling us, So, because of that, they brought him to Eli, meaning, this kid is trouble. It was like bringing him to the principal's office, This kid is causing trouble already, telling us we don't need a Kohen for this, we don't need for that. He's telling us what the halacha is, it's chutzpah. So they brought him to Eli, that's what the Midrash says. Now, of course, the question is, okay, that's a very nice story. But where do you see from the Navi anywhere that Shmuel is even saying anything? It doesn't say that he said anything. It says that he showed up. His mother's bringing him. His mother says in the next pasuk to Eli that by the life of my master, I am the woman that was standing here a year ago. You probably don't remember me because lots of people come through here. I prayed for this child that I promised to give him. And here he is.
He's 1 year old.
What? No, he was nursed. They usually, back then they nursed like 3 years usually. 3-4 years. They nursed longer than they do today. So, for most people. I mean, some people are still into nursing, till the child is much older, but 3-4 years old they nursed. It also saved a lot on food probably, money wise. So they know. So that was a concern. So that you remember that they didn't. That was the only. That was a great resource. So so he was like 3-4 years old, let's say, maybe 5. So he's like a little kid, under elementary school level, and then coming in. But the Midrash is describing him as making some halachic pronouncement specifically about who's allowed or not allowed to slaughter a korban. Now we know the halacha in Torah Sheba'al Peh is a kohen is not necessary for shechita. That is the Torah Sheba'al Peh that we have. That the halacha is any other part of the sacrifice a kohen must do. Receive the blood, move the blood to the mizbeach, apply the blood to the altar. All these things a kohen must do. But shechita does not need to be done by a kohen. That is the halacha. That is true. Okay? So the Midrash is tying in a true halacha here. But why are they putting this halacha in the mouth of Shmuel and making it seem like Shmuel is a troublemaker from the minute he gets there? I mean, it's odd that they would tie that to when we can read the pasuk in context. Oh yeah, they brought the par because they were celebrating and they were thanking Hashem for the chesed of the kindness of giving them this baby, and then they also brought the baby to Eli, and then she explained this is the reason. What's bothering them textually is that it's in one pasuk. Why does it mention they slaughtered the bull and they brought the child to Eli? It sounds like there's a connection directly between the two. When really it should be they brought the child to Eli and she said to him, this is the child. Why does it connect the bringing of the child to the slaughtering of the bull? That's a technical reason for bringing the Midrash, but inventing this whole backstory that he gave a halachic ruling about something that he wasn't supposed to, and they got in trouble to the principal's office. It
sound like eye worshipping. Is that like a they doing?
What?
They do it.
No, regular. It's a korban. It's a korban. It was just a regular korban.
What's that to do with the baby?
What?
What's that to do with the baby?
No, they were when people would sometimes come. First of all, they were coming for Aliyah L'Regel, so they had to bring korbanot. But also, when you would pledge, to thank Hashem for anything, you could pledge extra korbanot. So they brought extra korbanot. Now the Masechet Berachot, I don't have it in front of me in the Hebrew, but I have from the sheet that I was going to hand out on here. So Rabbi Eliezer said Shmuel gave a decision in the presence of his teacher. Okay, and what was the connection? Eli said to them, bring a kohen to do shechita on this animal. And Shmuel saw them looking for a kohen. He said, you don't need to look for a kohen. You can do it by a regular person. It doesn't need to be a kohen. So they brought him to Eli. And he said, how do you know this? Eli asked the kid, Shmuel, how do you know this halacha? And Shmuel said, it never says the kohen has to do shechita. It always says that the kohanim have to bring the blood to the mizbeach. That's when the job of the kohen starts. Not before that. He doesn't have to do shechita. And he said to him, you're right, but you're still not supposed to say that in front of your teacher. Right? So then Hannah interceded and said, no, don't punish him. With this whole thing was Hashem obviously has a plan for this child. Don't punish him for being impetuous or for being disrespectful.
A 5-year-old knew better than like
Yeah. Happens sometimes now too. So this child is being has chutzpah. So Eli said, that's very good that you had the right answer, but you're still in trouble and chayav mitah, right? You have to be killed for being disrespectful, and that's why Hannah said, no, you don't understand. This is a special child. I prayed for this child. That's what the Midrash. That's in Masechet Berachot, the story in there. So the question is, why did the rabbis put these words in the mouth of Shmuel? What is the connection to the rest of the story of Shmuel? What does it give us? What insight does it give us into Shmuel? And I want to show you. I wish I had the sheet in front of all of you so you could see all the text.
Did she actually did that on purpose to sleep with another man?
No, she didn't. She threatened, I'll go in private. It says in Masechet Berachot that she said, if you don't give me a child, then I'll go in seclusion with another man, so I can become a sotah, and then you have to give me a child because I won't really commit a sin. because I won't commit a sin, but I'll be accused of being a sotah, so then you have to give me children. It's a long thing in Masechet Bracha, but I don't want to go into that part of it. Okay. Just the part about Shmuel. So let me try to explain, okay, what was happening. And I think if we look at the story of Shmuel, we see, what are the Chachamim essentially saying here? What are the Chachamim really saying? And by the way, Shmuel was a Levi. But what were the Chachamim really saying here? They're really saying that Shmuel was undermining the Kohanim. Right? Because the Kohanim said, oh, a Kohen has to do this. And he said, no, you don't need a Kohen. Why do you need a Kohen? Anybody can do this. Now keep that in mind for a second, because what you see happens in this Midrash is remarkable because it actually explains to you the entire story of Shmuel. Because if you know the story of Shmuel, you'll immediately see that this, in one word or in one little story, is basically a synopsis of exactly what Shmuel's career was. Because when Shmuel comes on the scene, who's in charge of the Beit HaMikdash? Eli Kohen is like a figurehead. He's like the rabbi emeritus. Okay? Who's the actual rabbis of the Beit HaMikdash, of Shiloh? Who are the practicing actual rabbis? The Kohanim, but two Kohanim who are not very popular. His two sons who are no good. Chofni and Pinchas. Did you learn the story of Chofni and Pinchas? Bad guys. In fact, what is the second? What is the opening of the actual story of Shmuel in Perek Bet? It says Vayelech Elkanah Ramata al Beito ve'Na'ar haya misharet Hashem et Pnei Eli Kohen. So that says that Shmuel served before Eli. In other words, Eli was his teacher. If you think of Eli as like the old master teaching, like, whatever master you want to use as your example from whatever story. It could be Master Shifu from. Did you see Kung Fu Panda? That's a good example. Or Yoda. He's an elder master who's not doing the hands-on daily work anymore. So he takes Shmuel under his wing. But it says, Uvne Eli b'nei Bili'al. But the sons of Eli were, Bili'al means Bili'ol. They were wild men. They were no good. Lo yad'u et Hashem. So it's contrasting which two people? Shmuel is misharet et Hashem, and Chofni and Pinchas are lo yad'u et Hashem. They didn't know Hashem. So wait a second, we have a little bit of a problem here. These Kohanim, who are supposed to be the religious leaders of Am Yisrael, don't know Hashem. They are corrupt individuals. And who is coming in from the outside? This nobody, Shmuel, that nobody ever... Who is this kid? And all of a sudden he's the one serving Hashem. So right away you start to see that Midrash about Shmuel saying, oh wait, the Kohanim don't have to do this. I'm going to take over here. You don't need... that's exactly what he did. Right? He basically said these Kohanim are by genetics, by hereditary rights they're serving here, but they don't know Hashem. He didn't say it that way. So what did the Bnei Eli do that was so bad?
They stole the korban without taking out the blood.
They didn't wait for them to put the korban actually on the Mizbeach. Right? They just took a big fork. They said, we're going to take whatever comes in the fork, which was not what they were supposed to do. They didn't take the exact amount they were supposed to. And they didn't wait for it to go on the Mizbeach. And they roughed up the people. Right? They roughed up the people. They hustled them. And if women came with the korbanot, because remember the korbanot of the women, that when you come to for a yoledet, for a woman who had a baby, they bring little birds. They said, we don't want those birds. There's no meat on the birds. So we're going to leave you at the end of the line. You stand on the end of the line. Whoever has a big animal that we're going to have a nice steak, you stand on the front of the line. So what happens? A lot of times those women didn't go for that day. They were waiting all day long, had to sleep over. Right? Why did they do that? Because they wanted to take the good meat. Nobody wants a little bird with this much meat on it. Right? Everybody, they want the good stuff. So, and they would threaten them. And if you don't give, lakachti v'chozka, we're going to take it by force if you don't give it right now. So they were mean guys. And remember, the people would come up. Think about the analogy of people who come to synagogue twice a year. And the only thing that they get when they come into synagogue is, hey, we want you to give money for this, and we want you to give money for that, and we want you to give this, and they get that's the only time that they ever come. Now, unfortunately, in synagogue business, that's what you got to you have to do fundraising. But the point is that if people, that's their only experience of the synagogue, is people asking them for money all the time. They say, I can't. What do I want with religion? Religion is only about money all the time. Or it's like sometimes the supposedly holy tzaddikim that come, they give brachot to everybody, and the first thing they say is, it'll be $100,000, that'll be $25,000. Then you get an idea that this is a business. Oh, I got a chance to see this holy person, but all they did was want a check from me. So this is, in a way, what the sons of Eli are giving people the impression, because they come only for the holidays, a lot of these people. They came from far and wide. And what's their only experience of coming in? Oh, we're going to go there, and they're going to hustle us for the meat, and they're going to harass us, and they're going to be rude, and it's going to be horrible. That's their experience of Hashem.
Didn't Elkanah take a different path every time?
To try to get people to come.
Yeah, so Chofni and Pinchas whatever.
But even when they came, this is what they had to deal with. This is the leadership. The system was very unpalatable. It was very negative. But what does it say? It says, that the sin of these people was very great before Hashem because they were disgracing the name of Hashem. Okay, the offering of Hashem was disgraced. However, Shmuel misharetet pnei Hashem. But Shmuel was serving Hashem. So every time it mentions how bad Chofni and Pinchas are, it says how good Shmuel is. Okay? And that's how it goes. And it talks about how his mother would bring him new clothing every year, and so on and so forth. And it says that then Eli becomes very old. And it says, Vayigdal anar Shmuel em Hashem. That Shmuel grew up with Hashem. In other words, he grew up in this holy environment. And what happens? One night he has a dream, and in the dream, well, actually, first, even before that, that's why the sheets are so helpful, because they give me the order. Even before that, Eli himself tries to correct his sons. He says, listen, I hear bad things about you guys. You have a bad reputation. It's no good. And there's not going to be any way to get out of your terrible reputation. And it says, Hashem wanted them to lead to destruction. That was their punishment. They didn't hear the voice of Eli because Hashem wanted them to go down. But then the next pasuk is, Va'anar Shmuel olech v'gadel v'tov. Right? So the sons of Eli are going down. They're even more entrenched in their bad behavior. And Shmuel is beloved. Gam im Hashem v'gam im anashim. Because what did Eli say to them? He said that people don't like you and Hashem doesn't like your behavior. Hashem, you're going against Hashem and you're going against people. You might be able to bribe a human judge, but Hashem, you can't to get out of that. And then what does it say right after that? And Shmuel was good with Hashem and good with people. So you find this rising up of Shmuel and the descent of the sons of Eli. And then, of course, a message one night comes to Shmuel. The first nevuah that Shmuel has is that the sons of Eli are going to die. Right? They're going to die in one day. And that is exactly what does happen. Okay? So the very nevuah that he gets is the nevuah, the prophecy that the sons of Eli are going to die, and that the house of Eli is going to have a curse on it. Now, later on, even after Chofni and Pinchas are killed, and the Aron is captured by the Plishtim. So do you know who gathers everybody together? Shmuel gathers everybody together. He gathers everybody together in Mitzpah, and let me find where the pasuk is. When he gathers them together, he says to them, they bring an offering together before they go out to war against the Plishtim. Now, this bringing of an offering again is in a way taking over for the role of the Kohanim. It says Shmuel. This is in Perek Zayin of Shmuel. So it says that they all got together, and he tells them to get rid of all their idolatry, and he brings them to Mitzpah, and Shmuel has them bring an offering to Hashem, and they all do it together, which again, bringing an offering, Vayikach Shmuel telech halav echad, vayaleh olah kalil Hashem. So what role is Shmuel taking on? The role like a Kohen. And yet what happens? Instead of him going out to battle and losing, like the sons of Eli who were the real Kohanim, he ends up winning the battle. So what do you see from this? You see that a real Kohen, sometimes we have hereditary Kohanim who are the descendants of Aharon who serve a certain function, but sometimes religious leadership has to be handed off to non-Kohanim, because sometimes the inheritors of the Kohanic mantle are not up to the job. when they become corrupt. And so Shmuel steps in, although he's a Levi, and some point, and you can connect this also to the story of Korach, because Shmuel was a descendant of Korach. Korach challenged the Kehunah, but he was wrong to challenge the Kehunah in his time. Shmuel, the descendant of Korach, challenges the Kehunah, and he's right. He shows that the Kehunah is not serving its purpose. And in fact, it was causing Chilul Hashem. It was causing desecration of God's name. Shmuel comes and takes over. But at first, what does the Midrash say? That the Kohanim didn't like that. Who is this guy to tell us we don't need to do so? So that just by giving you that one image, right? That they were looking for a Kohen, and Shmuel said, no, you don't need a Kohen. The Shechita can be done by a non-Kohen. It's okay. And that they had this argument, and Eli said, how do you know that? And you're wrong for objecting. Shows you that there was this tension. In other words, that little story, that little image is to show you this tension between the Kohanic establishment, which had become corrupt, and Shmuel, who was challenging it from the outside and coming in really to orchestrate a revolution, where for the first time, the Kohanim are not going to be the religious leaders of the Jewish people. But Shmuel is going to rise up and become a leader. And because he comes in from the outside, he is able to radically transform the religious life of Am Yisrael and bring the people back to Avodat Hashem. Because notice, what does he have to do with them? He has to tell them to get rid of their idols. In the times of the Bnei Eli, they went so far from Hashem, they were worshipping idols. Shmuel brings them back to Torah, and he goes around on a positive campaign. He cycled through the entire country every year, visiting every town, keeping the people educated, keeping the people connected. This was the opposite of what the sons of Eli did. They sat in the Beit HaMikdash or in the Mishkan waiting for people to bring them meat. Shmuel went out there and he did what he needed to do to uplift the people. So that is, in a way, a challenge against the status quo. But it shows you exactly what Shmuel was all about. The reason why he was able to succeed was because he came from the outside. And he challenged the status quo. He challenged the hegemony of the Kohanim. And showed that sometimes the religious leadership, even though the Kohanim are given a special job, religious education and leadership are not the sole responsibility or province of the Kohanim. Sometimes it has to be passed to someone else who can do an even better job, like Shmuel. And that's what the Midrash shows you by giving you that one halacha, where the non-Kohen can edge in on the Kohen, and the Kohen might push back and say, no, you can't. We want the control, we want the power. That is exactly what happened in the times of Shmuel, and it really says the entire story of Shmuel, which is the Kohanim are going down, Shmuel rises up, and then of course he is the one who puts into place the first king of Israel. So he actually really fundamentally transforms the whole structure of Jewish society from a Kohanically run state to a politically run, to a king and Navi run community, which replaces it. So it really tells you what the whole book of Shmuel is about, that one little midrash. It's really amazing.
But now